Okay, so I'm going to share screen because I'd like to share some images during my talk. So no. Okay, so we've had that. Can I just say, by the way, that when you're watching this, if you're seeing people's faces down the side, you might like to minimize that box by clicking on the minus sign at the side so that you get the full screen for the image. Okay, so I'd like to pick up the theme of walking and talk about walking as a practice, but also different facets of walking, different aspects of walking. And I was really inspired to do this by seeing this particular poster on Facebook. A lot of people were sharing it around. Yes, gas prices are high. We can choose to travel less. We can choose to carpool. We can choose to bicycle. We can choose to walk. We can choose public transportation. Ukraine cannot, but there for the grace go we. I was very touched by seeing this because it seemed to me to speak at a number of different levels. And so I felt I'd like to base what I say this morning around this and to talk about the importance of walking, particularly to pick out that phrase, we can choose to walk. And I'd like to reflect on whether this choice to walk, whether it's a restriction or whether it's an opportunity, because I think in a way this is following on from some of the things that Paul was saying. The way that we frame things depicts how we experience them. So if we think in terms of the loss of the ability to buy cheap petrol as a restriction, then we have one mindset and one set of reactions and one set of practical responses to it. If we try to see it in a different way, then maybe it comes as an opportunity. And I think that this post-it that I've been talking about, I think in many ways that's the challenge that it gives to us. We immediately react to the fact that petrol prices are high. We feel upset, angry, cheated, I don't know, whatever we feel when we look at this, or maybe we feel different things, but the implication is that we don't like it. And at some level, most of us don't because of all the implications of it. But that opens up a number of opportunities to choose to feel something different, to choose to act in different ways. And it's put in contrast with the experience of the people of Ukraine. And indeed, I think for Ukraine, we can broaden this and put a lot of disadvantaged people in that lower half. Our minds are on Ukraine at the moment, but actually there are many things going on in the world that have massive impacts on people's lives and deaths. And all of these things are things that we, in our comfortable lives, are not experiencing. And so the choices that we have to make are often choices between two things that are, in fact, opportunities. So this is where I want to go with this. We've all seen the images of people coming out of Ukraine. I don't know what the latest count of refugees is, but it's in the millions. It's hard to really take on the impact of this. You look at these people, they could be the people that we meet walking down the street any day. And I think this is why it's touched so many people's hearts. They're wearing the kind of clothes that as Westerners we tend to wear. They're pulling the kind of suitcases that we pull along, and the thought goes through our minds, you know, if that was me, what would I put in that suitcase? The only things I could rescue from my life, what would I bring with me? And so one aspect of walking is that we walk in solidarity with people. We can also walk and we can feel that experience of sharing with them, of walking. We can imagine the flight out of the war zone, out of the danger, out of the fear, towards uncertainty, towards not knowing what your future is going to be, towards an empty slate, but at least towards something that feels safer than the terror that you're locked into at the moment, and the real imminent danger and discomfort and so on. And we can see people of all stages of life in this, and we can feel that connection to them as we walk. We've also seen lots of examples of people walking in protest. You know, in a way, this is a different kind of walking in solidarity, but it's walking to demonstrate to others that we are not aligned with acts of war, that we are standing with those people who are escaping. And so there have been many protests going on, and even in Russia, people have stood out and have been counted and have taken the consequences and are taking the consequences. So walking in solidarity is not always a safe thing. It's not always a comfortable thing. It's saying, I will put myself in a position of danger in order to try and diminish the danger that you're experiencing. It's something about a shared humanity, a shared path in life, a shared mindset. Yes, we can choose. We can choose to travel less. We can choose to carpool. We can choose to bicycle. We can choose to walk. We can choose public transportation. And I think one of the things that many of us are going to be very conscious of is that the choices may involve not using fossil fuels, not using gas and petrol, not particularly using these from Russia and all the economic implications when we're in Europe. But also, you know, when we walk, we are saving fuel. And this has effect, not just in terms of a protest, not just in terms of imposing sanctions and so trying to stop the war, but also environmentally. You know, this avoidance of fuel use, this in a way is a way that we can stand in solidarity with the environment, a way in which we can develop a practice that is actually saying, I'm not going to be part of the problem in all of this. So walking can become something that we sign up to as a statement of our position. And so as we go about our lives, there are choices. You know, we can choose to take the car, we can choose to take the public transport, we can choose to cycle, or we can choose to walk. And depending which of these places we're in, we have a different experience. You know, just looking at this image here, you can see that the person on the bus is going to have a different view of this street from the person who is walking along it. And when we start to think in those terms, then maybe we start to appreciate something of the richness of walking. You know, the person walking is experiencing the air. They're enjoying their body in movement. They're seeing the buildings and the trees and the people that they're passing in a way that the people in the cars and on the buses maybe are not. And so that choice can be a positive thing as well as a restriction. Yes, we can choose to travel less. We can choose to carpool. We can choose to bicycle. We can choose to walk. We can choose public transport. And so I want to reflect on walking as a positive choice. You know, for many people, it's a leisure activity, and nice to see this image of people out walking, maybe a little crowded. You know, I think many of us walk to get away from people, but that sense of enjoyment, of community, of being outdoors. And, you know, I think for me, one of the things, you know, we've just emerged from another major world experience that's affected all of us, the experience of COVID and the experience of lockdown. And one of the things that I certainly experienced during lockdown was walking a lot more. You know, people just went out and walked. I mean, this image is of our local beach where I'm living now. And you can see this wasn't actually during the height of lockdown, but people have got in the habit of walking. And talking with my daughters who've lived here, they said, well, it was like this all the time during lockdown. People were all out on the beach. It got really crowded. And, you know, people learned to just stay local, stay around their own area, experience it. And, you know, when we do that, it's like we start to slow down and we enjoy the locality of the walk. You know, one of the things that I started to notice was that there were all sorts of places to go and walk just round within 10 minutes of my house, which some of which I already knew or thought I knew. But even going to those, I would notice details of the landscape, details of the vegetation, details of the wildlife that maybe I hadn't particularly noticed, or I hadn't noticed as intensively before. But certainly, you know, anywhere that around you, you discover that there are paths that you maybe hadn't identified. I found back lanes that I hadn't walked down. I started to experiment with walking along those back lanes and seeing where I could get through the village in which I'd been living for 20 years, and found all sorts of new routes that I'd never thought about, and all the things along those routes. So there's something about walking that actually brings you into a relationship with the landscape, in which you start to notice the grass and the vegetation and those stones in the path here. You know, what are they made of? What underlies the earth? And so on. There's all sorts of things that, you know, in our normal way of things, we're not aware of, and still till we start to bring that regularity of visiting and we start to see the changing seasons, the way that things grow. It reminds me of a time when I injured my back, and I'd actually broken a vertebra, and it took me weeks to get back to walking. And I remember walking outside my house and just starting to notice it. The accident happened in January, and through January and February, I started to notice things starting to grow. And each day when I went out, they would be a little further on. It's like when we walk, and when we walk regularly, these little details start to become part of our world and start to give us a different viewpoint and a different perspective. And walking's grounding. It's a natural way of grounding ourselves. We can deliberately use grounding in the way that I invited at the beginning of this session, where we feel the earth underneath us and we consciously give our attention. But even just the act of walking itself brings us into contact with the earth in a way that's very deep and profound. And it can be lovely to walk barefoot on the earth, by the way. If you haven't done it, please do try it as the weather warms up. Feel the earth, feel the texture of grass, feel the texture of sand, you know, whatever surface you're walking on, feel the transitions and the differences. You know, I walk along the beach a lot now, and the difference between walking on wet sand and dry sand feels completely different underfoot. Noticing it, noticing the footprints that you leave. And walking can be a form of meditation. You know, walking meditation is very much part of the Buddhist tradition that I come from. And there are many different forms of it. I'm not going to talk about them all at the moment, but there are many different ways that we can walk meditatively. And we can walk mindfully, you know, an extension of meditation, walking, perhaps bringing it into a more secular Western context. Walking with awareness, walking, touching the elements of ground and the different things around us, allowing all our senses to be alive to our context, connecting with the earth, connecting with the growth, this springtime picture of new nettles coming through. We walk alone or we walk with others, feeling that companionship, that lovely sense of holding a child's hand as you walk. Different spaces. They all impact on us. You know, we feel in an embodied way these different landscapes. And whether we're in the city, whether we're in the wilds, whether we're in more domesticated rural settings, we feel that context as we walk. So walking brings together different aspects of our experience. The inner process, mindful contemplation, experiencing our emotional life, experiencing the letting go of the walking. An embodied process, feeling our bodies in movement, the way that those emotions interact with the physicality of our presence, the way that our muscles work, the way that our bones work, the way that our joints go through processes of transformation as we walk. And feeling that connection to the earth as we touch the earth with our feet. And moving through space, connecting with our surroundings, with the environment, with the great system that we're part of. Being a moving element within the landscape, feeling the vibrancy of life in our bodies, touching the earth as we walk. So I'm just going to invite you now, just in the last few moments, just to stand. I'm going to stand myself. And I'd like you to feel the ground under your feet. Close your eyes and just feel that physical connection with the earth. Breathe out, and as you breathe, let your shoulders loosen, let your arms drop to your sides. Let your energy go down into your feet and feel the solidity of the ground. Just gently rock your body to and fro. And as you do so, notice how your center of gravity moves and your experience of the ground through your feet changes. Notice how the imprint of your feet changes. And breathe out down through the feet. And I'd like you to feel as you stand that solidity that connection, the solidarity with the people who are suffering in the world, with the people walking from home. Feel solidarity, feel connection. And at the same time, bring your attention to the privilege of standing on the earth. And I'd like to just invite you just to take a few steps, to walk and feel how each step you reconnect. Each step is a movement forward into the unknown, because all of our futures are unknown. But each step forward you take with trust. Each step forward, you're embracing the earth. Each step forward, you discover again that solid ground that holds you. Meditatively walking, we connect with the earth. We connect with the air. We connect with our surroundings, with the space that we inhabit and with which we are one. And so in your own time, returning to your space, I'd like to invite you to take this walking with awareness. And when we take a break over lunchtime, to take an opportunity to go outside and to walk outside and to experience that earth connection and the liveness of being in the open air in the sunshine, assuming that you have sunshine where you are, and the enjoyment of being alive in this moment, step by step by step. Thank you.
Thank you.